The year was 2347, and humanity believed they were alone in the universe. They had spread across 12 worlds in 3-star systems. They had built great ships and proud cities on distant planets. They looked at the stars with wonder and hope, never knowing what waited for them in the darkness between galaxies. Commander Daniel stood on the bridge of the starship Defiance. He was a tall man with gray at his temples and calm brown eyes. He had served in the fleet for 22 years and had seen many strange things in deep space, but nothing had prepared him for what appeared on his that cold morning. The signal had come from the edge of human space. It was not natural. It was not human. Daniel had brought a fleet of 6 ships to investigate, expecting perhaps an old satellite or a strange cosmic event. What he found made his blood run cold. The alien ship was 12 kilometers long. It was black and silver and shaped like a blade. It made the Defiance look like a toy. Daniel stood very still as his crew worked their instruments in shocked silence. Lieutenant Commander Amy Torres was the first to speak. She was young for her rank, only 31, with sharp eyes and quick hands. She handled the tactical station, and she did not like what she saw. She told Daniel that the alien ship had weapons unlike anything in human records. Its shields were so powerful that their sensors could barely penetrate them. One ship like this could destroy every human world in a single day. Daniel ordered the fleet to hold position. He opened a communication channel. For a long moment there was nothing but silence. Then the flickered and a face appeared. The alien was humanoid but not human. Its skin was pale blue and its eyes were large and completely black. It had no hair and its head was slightly too large for its thin body. When it spoke, its voice was deep and carried the weight of absolute authority. The alien introduced itself as High Arbiter of the Dominion. It said that the Dominion had ruled the galaxy for 6 million years. It said that humanity had been observed and judged. It said that there were only 2 choices. Humanity could surrender immediately and serve the Dominion as a labor species, or humanity could be destroyed completely. Daniel felt his hands tighten into fists. He asked how long humanity had to decide, seemed almost amused by the question. It said 30 standard days. Then the communication ended. The trip back to Earth was the longest of Daniel's life. He sent word ahead by faster-than-light communication. By the time the Defiance reached home, the entire human race knew what had happened. The United Human Coalition met in emergency session in the Great Hall in Geneva. Secretary General Lisa Park presided over the meeting. She was a small woman with silver hair and a voice that could silence a room. She had led humanity through 2 colony wars and a plague, but this was different. This was extinction. Admiral Cole was the oldest serving officer in the fleet. He was 83 years old and had been fighting since he was 17. He stood before the assembly and said that surrender was not an option. The Dominion had given humanity a choice between slavery and death. He chose death. He would rather see humanity burn than bow to alien masters. Many in the assembly agreed, but many others were afraid. The Dominion was too powerful. Their technology was too advanced. What hope did humanity have against an empire that had stood for millions of years? Amy Torres was called to testify about what she had seen. She described the alien ship in detail. She explained that their weapons could destroy a planet from orbit. She explained that their shields seemed impenetrable. But she also said something that gave people pause. She said the aliens had seemed surprised when humanity did not immediately surrender. She said they had expected fear and submission. They had not expected defiance. After the assembly, Daniel met with Amy in a quiet room overlooking the lake. They talked about what might come. They talked about their families and their homes. They talked about the 12 worlds that might soon be nothing but ash. Daniel said he would fight even if he had to fight alone. Amy said he would not be alone. On the lunar base, in a small laboratory filled with equipment, Dr. Benjamin Hayes worked through the night. He was humanity's foremost physicist, a gentle man with messy hair and thick glasses. He had been given all the sensor data from the encounter with the Dominion ship. He had been told to find a weakness. Benjamin studied the readings for hours. He drank cold coffee and forgot to eat. He ran calculations and simulations. And slowly, very slowly, he began to see something. The Dominion's shields operated on specific harmonic frequencies. These frequencies were complex, but they were predictable. The technology was incredibly advanced, but it had not changed in a very long time. The Dominion had ruled unchallenged for so long that they had stopped innovating. They had stopped adapting. They had grown comfortable in their power. Benjamin called Admiral Cole in the middle of the night. He said he might have found something. He said it would take time to develop, but it might give humanity a chance. Cole asked him how much time he needed. Benjamin said he did not know. Cole told him to work as fast as he could. Across human space, the news spread. Some people packed their belongings and fled to remote colonies, hopping to hide. Some people prayed. Some people held their families close and waited for the end. But others began to prepare. Old soldiers came out of retirement. Young people signed up for the fleet in numbers never seen before. Factories that had built civilian goods began building weapons. Scientists who had studied stars began studying war. Humanity had 30 days. 30 days to prepare for the greatest battle in their history. 30 days to find a way to survive against impossible odds. The clock was ticking and the galaxy was watching. Daniel stood at the window of his quarters on the Defiance. He looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Dominion was waiting. They thought humanity would surrender. They thought humanity would break. They were wrong. The news of the Dominion's ultimatum spread across every human world like fire through dry grass. People gathered in the streets and watched the broadcasts. They saw the alien ship. They heard the alien voice. They understood that everything they had built might soon be gone. On Mars Colony 7, retired General sat in his small house and watched the same broadcast. He was 68 years old with a face like weathered leather and hands that still remembered how to hold a weapon. He had fought in the colony wars 30 years ago. He had thought his fighting days were over. His communication device rang. It was Admiral Cole. The Admiral said humanity needed every experienced soldier it could find. He asked to come back. Did not hesitate. He said yes before Cole finished speaking. Within 2 days, was on a transport ship heading back to Earth. He began organizing resistance cells on every colony. He knew that if the space battle was lost, humanity would need fighters on the ground. He trained civilians to become soldiers. He taught them to hide and to strike and to never give up. He told them that even if the skis burned, they would keep fighting. Meanwhile, Dr. Benjamin Hayes worked without rest in his laboratory. His breakthrough with the harmonic frequencies had given him hope. He believed he could build a weapon that would disrupt the Dominion shields, but believing and doing were different things. He was not alone in his work. Park was a young engineer, only 25 years old, with wild ideas and a reputation for building things that should not work. He had designed experimental weapons that the military had rejected as too dangerous and unstable. Now those same weapons might save humanity. Joined Benjamin in the laboratory. Together they worked on what they called the harmonic disruptor. It was a device that would broadcast frequencies designed to collapse Dominion shields. In theory, it would work. In practice, they would not know until they tested it in battle. On Earth, Amy Torres received a promotion. She was now in charge of a special task force dedicated to finding unconventional solutions to the Dominion threat. She recruited the best minds she could find, including Dr. Fields, who specialized in alien life forms. Studied all the data they had on the Dominion. She analyzed their physical appearance and their behavior. She developed a theory that troubled her deeply. She believed the Dominion might have biological weaknesses they were hiding. Their pale skin and large eyes suggested a species that had evolved in low light conditions. Their slow movements and careful speech suggested a species that was old and perhaps fragile. She presented her findings to Amy. Amy listened carefully. She asked what this meant for humanity's chances, said it might mean nothing, or it might mean everything. She needed more data to be sure. The only way to get more data was to go into Dominion space. Captain Grace volunteered for this mission. She commanded the research vessel Pioneer, a small ship with a crew of 37 scientists and soldiers. The ship was fast and had advanced sensors. It was perfect for a spy mission. Grace was 40 years old with red hair turning gray and green eyes that had seen too much. She had lost her husband in an accident 5 years ago. She had no children. She had nothing to lose except her life, and she was willing to risk that for humanity. Admiral Cole approved the mission. He told Grace that she was humanity's best hope for intelligence gathering. He told her to be careful, but he also told her to find out everything she could. Grace nodded and said she would not let him down. The Pioneer slipped away from Earth in the middle of the night. It was a secret departure. Only a handful of people knew where it was going. Grace set course for Dominion territory, and her crew prepared for the most dangerous mission of their lives. Back on Earth, Secretary General Lisa Park addressed the coalition again. She spoke of courage and unity. She spoke of the human spirit that had survived ice ages and plagues and wars. She said that humanity would not go quietly into the darkness. They would fight with everything they had. Her words inspired people across every colony. Volunteers flooded the recruitment centers. Factories worked day and night. Scientists pushed themselves beyond their limits. Everyone understood that they were in a race against time. Admiral Cole presented his battle strategy to the military council. He explained that humanity could not win a defensive war. The Dominion fleet was too powerful. Their only chance was to attack first. Strike before the enemy expected it. Use speed and surprise to compensate for their lack of firepower. Daniel supported this plan. He argued that the Dominion had never faced an enemy willing to attack them. They had conquered thousands of species, but those species had always surrendered or tried to run. No one had ever fought back. Humanity would be the first. 20 days remained before the deadline. Benjamin and worked around the clock on the harmonic disruptor. They built prototype after prototype. Each one failed in a different way, but each failure taught them something new. Finally, on the 15th day, they built a version that worked in simulation. It collapsed a simulated Dominion shield in less than 3 seconds. Benjamin stared at the results and felt tears in his eyes. He had done it. They had a weapon. Immediately began working on how to integrate the disruptor into a missile. It would not be easy. The device was delicate and the forces of launch could destroy it, but he was confident he could solve the problem. Amy received the news with fierce joy. She ordered the mass production of the disruptors to begin immediately. Every factory that could build them would build them. They would have as many as possible by the time the Dominion arrived. Somewhere in the dark space between stars, the Pioneer made its way toward enemy territory. Grace stood on the bridge and watched the stars slide past. She thought about Earth. She thought about the people she was trying to protect. She thought about the mission ahead. She did not know if she would survive. She did not know if humanity would survive. But she knew that she would do everything in her power to give her species a chance. 10 days remained. The clock kept ticking. And somewhere in the darkness, the Dominion fleet was preparing to move. The Pioneer crossed into Dominion territory on the 8th day before the deadline. Grace ordered all non-essential systems shut down. They ran silent through the darkness, avoiding patrol routes and hiding in the shadows of dead moons. Her crew worked in whispers. Every sensor sweep, every course adjustment, every breath felt dangerous. They knew that if they were discovered, there would be no rescue. They were alone in enemy space. On the 3rd day of their mission, they found what they were looking for. A Dominion data station orbited a small planet at the edge of a major trade route. Grace ordered her best hackers to work on breaking through the station's security. It took 6 hours, but they got in. What they found changed everything. The Dominion kept records of every species they had encountered. Over 300 species had refused to surrender to the Dominion over the last million years. Every single one of them had been destroyed. Their planets had been burned. Their people had been killed to the last child. Their names had been erased from history. But that was not the worst part. Grace found humanity's file. It had been created before the ultimatum was delivered. The file said that humanity was too aggressive, too adaptable, too dangerous to be allowed to survive. The Dominion had never intended to accept surrender. Earth was marked for complete destruction no matter what humanity chose. Grace felt cold rage fill her heart. She ordered her crew to copy every piece of data they could find. She wanted Earth to know the truth. She wanted humanity to understand that surrender had never been an option. The Pioneer began its journey back to human space, but they had stayed too long. Dominion patrols had detected their presence. 3 enemy ships moved to intercept them. Grace knew they could not outrun the Dominion vessels. Their engines were not fast enough. She gathered her crew and told them the truth. She said that the data they carried was more important than any of their lives. She ordered everyone to the escape pods. They would scatter in every direction. Some of them might make it home. Her crew protested. They did not want to leave her, but Grace was their captain and her word was law. She told them that someone had to stay behind to fly the ship and destroy the navigation data. If the Dominion captured the ship intact, they would learn the location of every human colony. She would not let that happen. The crew obeyed. 36 escape pods launched from the Pioneer and flew in every direction. Grace watched them go. Then she turned the ship toward the nearest Dominion vessel. She transmitted the data to Earth using every bit of power her ship had. The message would reach home in 3 hours. Then she set the ship's reactor to overload. When the Dominion boarded the Pioneer, they would find nothing but fire. Grace died alone in the darkness between stars, but her sacrifice was not in vain. When the data reached Earth, Secretary General Lisa Park called an emergency broadcast. She showed the people of every colony what the Dominion had planned for them. She showed them the records of 300 dead species. She showed them humanity's file with its cold verdict of extinction. The reaction was immediate and powerful. Fear turned to anger. Doubt turned to determination. People who had considered surrender now swore to fight. Grace became a symbol of defiance. Her name was spoken with reverence across every human world. Dr. Benjamin Hayes received the data from the Pioneer with a mixture of grief and hope. Hidden in the files were technical specifications for Dominion technology. He used this information to improve the harmonic disruptor. The new version was twice as effective as the original. Park worked without sleep to integrate the improved disruptor into their weapons systems. He developed a new missile that could deliver the disruptor payload at close range. The first batch rolled off the assembly lines 3 days before the deadline. Amy Torres coordinated the defense of Earth's orbital stations. She realized that the civilian infrastructure could be turned into weapons platforms. Mining satellites became bomb launchers. Communication arrays became targeting systems. Every piece of human technology in orbit was adapted for war. Admiral Cole finalized the battle plan. The human fleet would not wait at Earth. They would meet the Dominion in deep space and attack with everything they had. It was a desperate gamble, but it was their only chance. Daniel prepared the Defiance for what might be its final mission. He walked through the corridors of his ship and spoke with every member of his crew. He told them that he was proud to serve with them. He told them that whatever happened, they would face it together. On Mars, continued training his resistance fighters. He received word of Grace's sacrifice and gathered his people together. He told them her story. He told them that she had given her life so that humanity might have a chance. He asked them if they were willing to do the same. Every hand in the room went up. Across human space, final preparations were made. Families said goodbye. Soldiers wrote letters to loved ones. Priests and pastors held services in crowded churches. The human race prepared to face its greatest test. Dr. Fields made a breakthrough on the final day. She had analyzed the biological data recovered from the Pioneer. The Dominion species was dying. Their genetic code was degrading over generations. They were becoming weaker, not stronger. They conquered other species because they needed their resources and their labor to survive. Presented her findings to the military council. She explained that the Dominion was not as invincible as they appeared. Their ancient empire was built on crumbling foundations. Humanity's youth and adaptability might be the greatest weapons they possessed. Admiral Cole smiled for the first time in weeks. He said that they finally had hope, real hope. He ordered the fleet to make final preparations. The deadline arrived at midnight. Across human space, people held their breath and watched the stars. Somewhere in the darkness, the Dominion fleet was coming. Daniel stood on the bridge of the Defiance. He looked at his crew. He looked at the stars. He thought of Grace and her sacrifice. He thought of his family on Earth. He thought of all the people counting on him. He gave the order to move out. The human fleet advanced to meet its destiny. The Dominion fleet arrived 2 days early. 300 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. Each ship was massive and ancient and terrible. High Arbiter stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the small blue planet in the distance. He expected to find a broken species ready to beg for mercy. He was wrong. The human fleet was waiting for them. 200 ships of every size formed a wall between the Dominion and Earth. They were smaller and weaker and fewer in number, but they were not afraid. Broadcast a message to the human fleet. He demanded immediate surrender. He said that resistance was pointless. He said that humanity had one final chance to save themselves. Admiral Cole responded with a single word: no. The Dominion opened fire. Beams of burning light cut through space toward the human ships. The first volley destroyed 12 vessels in seconds. Explosions bloomed like flowers in the darkness. Thousands of lives ended in an instant. But the humans did not retreat. They surged forward. Daniel led the assault from the Defiance. His ship dove toward the Dominion formation at maximum speed. Enemy fire raked across his shields, but he did not slow down. He shouted orders to his crew: fire everything. The first wave of harmonic disruptor missiles launched from 50 human ships. They streaked across the void and struck the Dominion shields. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the shields flickered and collapsed. For the first time in 3 million years, a Dominion warship was exposed and vulnerable. Human weapons poured into the gap. The ancient vessel exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the darkness for 1,000,000 kilometers. Silence fell across the Dominion fleet, stared at his in disbelief. His people had ruled the galaxy for 6 million years. They had crushed countless species beneath their feet. No one had ever destroyed one of their warships. Until now. The battle erupted into chaos. Human ships swarmed the Dominion formation like angry insects. They were faster and more maneuverable than the massive alien vessels. They struck and retreated and struck again. More disruptor missiles found their targets. More Dominion shields fell. But the enemy recovered quickly, ordered a full offensive. The Dominion fleet spread out and began hunting human ships with cold precision. For every alien vessel that fell, 10 human ships were destroyed. Amy Torres coordinated the defense from Earth orbit. She watched the battle unfold on her tactical display and made split-second decisions that saved thousands of lives. She directed fire from the converted civilian platforms. Mining satellites launched their payloads into Dominion engines. Communication arrays disrupted enemy targeting systems. Park was not content to watch from safety. He climbed into an experimental bomber loaded with the largest disruptor warhead ever built. His target was the Dominion flagship itself. He launched into the battle with a squadron of fighters as escort. Enemy fire destroyed his escorts one by one. His ship was hit 3 times. Alarms screamed in his ears. Smoke filled his cockpit. But he kept going. Reached the flagship and released his weapon. The massive warhead struck the alien ship directly and detonated. The explosion tore through the vessel's core systems. The flagship listed to one side, crippled and burning. His damaged bomber spun away from the blast. He fought for control as his ship tumbled through the debris. He managed to stabilize and set course for Earth. His mission was complete. On the Defiance, Daniel pushed his ship beyond its limits. He destroyed 3 Dominion vessels in the first 6 hours of battle, but the enemy fire was relentless. His shields failed. His engines were hit. Half his crew was dead or wounded. A Dominion beam struck the bridge. Daniel was thrown across the room. He felt bones break. He tasted blood. Darkness crept at the edges of his vision, but he refused to lose consciousness. He dragged himself to the command chair and kept fighting. The battle raged for 18 hours. Neither side retreated. Neither side surrendered. The space between Earth and the Dominion fleet became a graveyard of burning ships and frozen bodies. Human losses were catastrophic. Over 60% of the fleet was destroyed. Thousands of brave soldiers gave their lives to protect their home. The cost of resistance was measured in blood and fire. But the Dominion paid a price as well. Over 100 of their warships were destroyed. 100 vessels that had seemed invincible. 100 monuments to their power reduced to ash and memory. Stood on the bridge of his crippled flagship and faced a truth he had never imagined. He was losing, not just the battle, his reputation, his honor, his belief in Dominion supremacy. He ordered a retreat. The surviving Dominion ships turned and fled into the darkness. They activated their faster-than-light drives and vanished from the solar system. The battle was over. Silence fell across human space. For a long moment no one moved, no one spoke. Then slowly, a wave of realization spread through the surviving ships. They had won. Admiral Cole sent a message to the retreating Dominion fleet. His voice was steady and strong despite his exhaustion. He said that humanity would not forget this day. He said that the Dominion had come to destroy them and had failed. He said that if they returned, humanity would be ready. He ended with a promise. This was just the beginning. On the Defiance, Daniel was carried to the medical bay. He had 3 broken ribs, a fractured skull, and burns across half his body, but he was alive. As the medics worked on him, he smiled. They had done the impossible. On Earth, people emerged from shelters and looked up at the sky. The war was not over. The Dominion would return, but humanity had proven something to the galaxy. They would not go quietly. They would not surrender. They would fight until the last star burned out. And they would win. News of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Every species under Dominion rule heard the story. A young civilization barely 3 centuries into space travel had bloodied the nose of the greatest empire in galactic history. The unthinkable had happened. On 40,000 worlds, enslaved peoples whispered in the darkness. They spoke of the humans who had refused to surrender. They spoke of the ships that had burned in defiance. They spoke of hope. On Earth, the aftermath of the battle brought both grief and celebration. The dead were buried with full honors. Every name was recorded. Every sacrifice was remembered. Monuments were built in every city to honor those who had given everything. Daniel recovered slowly in a hospital in Geneva. His wounds healed, but the scars remained. Amy Torres visited him often. She had been promoted to Rear Admiral for her actions during the battle. She brought him flowers and news from the fleet. They spoke about the future. The Dominion would return. Everyone knew this. had promised revenge, and the Empire would not accept defeat easily, but humanity would be ready. They had time now, time to build more ships, time to improve their weapons, time to prepare. Dr. Benjamin Hayes began a new project in his laboratory. Captured Dominion technology from the battle gave him new insights. He worked on adapting their faster-than-light drives for human ships. He worked on improving their shields. He worked on making humanity stronger. Park returned as a hero. His destruction of the Dominion flagship had turned the tide of the battle, but he did not rest on his glory. He went back to work immediately. He had new ideas for weapons, bigger ideas, better ideas. Dr. Fields continued her research into Dominion biology. The samples recovered from destroyed enemy ships confirmed her theory. The Dominion species was in decline. Their genetic code was failing. Each generation was weaker than the last. They had built their empire to sustain themselves, but even that was not enough. They were dying slowly over. Presented her findings to Secretary General Lisa Park. She explained that the Dominion's aggression came from desperation. They needed resources and labor from conquered species to survive. Humanity's youth and adaptability were advantages the Dominion could never match. Time was on humanity's side. Lisa Park addressed the coalition with this information. She spoke of the future with confidence. She said that humanity would not wait for the next attack. They would reach out to other species under Dominion rule. They would build alliances. They would carry the fire of resistance to every corner of the galaxy. The coalition voted unanimously to support her plan. Humanity would become a beacon of hope for the oppressed peoples of the galaxy. They would offer friendship and support to any species willing to stand against the Dominion. On Mars, General continued training the next generation of soldiers. Thousands of young people had enlisted after the battle. They came from every colony. They came with fire in their hearts and determination in their eyes. Among them was a young man named Jake. He was 22 years old with red hair and green eyes that looked just like his sister's. Grace's sacrifice had changed his life. He had been a student before the war. Now he was a soldier. Saw something special in Jake. The same courage and determination that had made Grace a hero lived in her brother. Took him under his wing and trained him personally. He told Jake that his sister's memory would live on through every battle they fought. The first alien contact came 3 months after the battle. A small ship from a species called the Crossed into human space. They came with a message from the resistance movements forming across the galaxy. They had heard of humanity's victory. They wanted to join forces. Admiral Cole met with the delegation personally. They were a reptilian species with golden scales and wise eyes. Their world had been conquered by the Dominion 10,000 years ago. They had waited all that time for someone to stand against their masters. Cole offered them friendship and alliance. They accepted. It was the first of many such meetings. Over the following months, representatives from a dozen species made their way to human space. Each one had their own story of Dominion oppression. Each one had been inspired by humanity's defiance. Together, they began building a coalition of resistance that would shake the foundations of the galaxy. Far away in the heart of Dominion space stood before the High Council. The ancient rulers of the Empire demanded answers. How had primitives defeated them? How had the unthinkable happened? Had no good answers. He spoke of human aggression and unpredictability. He spoke of their willingness to sacrifice everything. He spoke of their strange refusal to accept the natural order of the galaxy. The council was not satisfied. They stripped of his rank and sent him into exile. A new fleet was ordered to be assembled, the largest fleet in Dominion history. It would crush humanity once and for all. But in the shadows of the council chamber, representatives from the conquered species watched. They served the Dominion as slaves and servants. They poured drinks and cleaned floors and were ignored by their masters. They saw the fear in the eyes of the High Council. They saw the uncertainty in their movements. They saw the cracks forming in the foundations of the empire. And they began to hope. On Earth, Daniel finally left the hospital. He stood on a balcony overlooking the city and watched the sunset. Amy Torres stood beside him. They did not speak for a long time. Finally, Daniel said that the war was just beginning. Amy nodded. She said that humanity was ready, more than ready. She said they had allies now. They had weapons. They had something the Dominion could never understand. She said they had hope. Daniel looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, countless species were watching, waiting, hoping that the stories they had heard were true, hoping that someone would finally stand against the darkness. Humanity had not just survived the day the galaxy's most powerful empire came to destroy them. They had lit a fire that would spread across the stars. They had started a revolution that would change the galaxy forever. The Dominion had ruled for 6 million years, but their time was ending. A new age was beginning, and humanity would lead the way.